Hallelujah. Okay, so it's super raining. You probably can hear that it's raining. And I just want to say, Baruch Hashem, thank you, Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, you are so wonderful. Thank you for beginning to free the Iranian people. So I know if you watch this channel, you know that I told you, I told you that by Purim, the Iranian people would be free. Now, why is it? Well, because it's Purim. And we're going to go over the story of Purim a little bit, and we're going to talk. I'll try to be attentive to the comments, right? We're going to talk one-on-one. We'll answer any questions. If you want to say something, maybe not everybody's so gun-ho about war. You know what I mean? Of course not. But I think this is very necessary. In the past month or so, and really it didn't take them, it took them about 2.5 weeks to murder over 85,000 unarmed civilians in the streets, right? That's what it took the Iranian people, the Iranian government to kill the Iranian people literally in 2.5 weeks. And I think this is just amazing and just wonderful. And I know it's a God moment. It's a real God moment right now. And I'm excited about it. I'm very much excited about it. So why did I tell you that by Purim, the Iranian people would be free? Well, because God remembers. God remembers, and he is faithful. He is faithful to the people who remember, the people that are the apple of his eye. So in the story of Purim, right, there is a young orphan girl, right, named Hadassah, and she's raised by her uncle cousin Mordecai. And her uncle cousin Mordecai, right, he's really her cousin, but everybody says her uncle Mordecai, right, because he's the one raising her pseudo dad. He's raising them. They're Benjamites. Originally, their family's from Israel. And they wind up during the Babylonian exile in Persia with Daniel and all them. And the king at the time, Xerxes, right, in Jewish circles, you call him Ahasuerus, right? He had another wife, right? He had a wife when Esther was very young, or Hadassah was very young. And she wasn't very obedient, right? He summons her. It's a big deal to be summoned by the king, right? It's a big deal to go to the king. If you don't get summoned, you could be killed. And then what happens is she doesn't come. He wants to kill her. His advisors say, no, don't do that. How about we publicly dethrone her, right? We don't want our queen to be able to disrespect our king, because then none of our wives will listen to us, and that'll be the end of the kingdom. So publicly dethrone her. Have a beauty pageant in all the provinces of Persia, 127 provinces. Choose all the young and fair virgins, and choose the one from those 127 provinces that you like the best, and take Vashti's crown and put it on someone who is more worthy than her. And that's what happens. Now, Hadassah, right, is Jewish. Her uncle Mordecai says, you need to join this pageant. She's like, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm Jewish and nobody's going to pick me. Have you been seeing this anti-Semitism lately? And Mordecai is like, you are going to join this pageant, and you're not going to tell anybody that you're Jewish. And from now on, your name is no longer Hadassah, it's Esther, because you're going to be a star, right? And so she joins this pageant. She goes through all the hoopla of preparing to meet the king for about a year, 6 months of perfumes and frankincense, 6 months of cosmetics and oils. You got to look the part if you're going to be the queen, right? So she prepares to be the queen, and finally she meets Ahasuerus, and he chooses her. And so she is the queen of Persia. Now, King Xerxes had a best friend who became viceroy. His name was Haman. Haman was a great guy to Xerxes, but not so much to the rest of the kingdom. And the king at the time had made a decree that everybody who looks upon Haman should smile and bow. Now, Jews don't bow down to anybody but God. And Uncle Mordecai is always sitting in the palace gates, just making sure nothing bad happens. Now, while he's sitting in the gates, just minding his own business, right? Not talking to anybody. When you mind your own business, you don't talk to anybody, you become invisible, right? People forget you're there. He overhears these two crazy guards plotting to kill the king. And so he tells Queen Esther, and of course she tells the king, and he saves his life from an assassination attempt. So they write that down in the Chronicles. Now, Haman passes the gate, And Mordecai does not bow down. Does Haman notice? No, he doesn't notice because he's a narcissist, doesn't notice anybody but himself. But his servants notice. His servants notice and they go, hey, Haman, you know that Jew that's always sitting in the gate? That Jew that's always sitting in the gate over there? He didn't bow down to you. And his name is Mordecai. And you know what else? He's a Jew. So, so Haman decides that instead of punishing Mordecai, he's going to punish all 127 provinces worth of Jews with death. And he writes a decree using the king's signet ring, right? So it's the same as if the king had made this decree himself. And he casts lots for the day of Adar 14th, right? Lots is like, if you've ever heard the term, you drew the short stick. Well, the short stick is a lot. So Purim actually means lots. And in this decree, he basically says that on the 14th of Adar, right, which is going to happen on Tuesday, during the blood moon and all that is happening. We'll get into that later, right? On the 14th of Adar, all the Jews in Persia are to be killed, right? And he's going to give 10,000 talents of silver to all the people that do the killing, right? So the amount of money that it took to do this whole thing was like more than $3 billion today of silver. And even though he really confused the Persian people by putting out this decree in every language possible, in every province possible, if you want money, you're going to do this thing, right? And so Mordecai sees the decree, starts going around the city wailing, rips off his clothes, puts on sackcloth and ashes, sits outside the temple or the palace gates in Shushan. You cannot sit in the gate because you're not presentable, right, to sit in the palace gates if you're looking like that. And so Esther sees him looking all beshugana, right, sitting out there in sackcloth and ashes, and she sends him a change of clothes, and he sends her back the change of clothes and a letter explaining everything that had happened, that it's all his fault, and that she's got to go and plead for the life of her people to the king. But there's a problem. She hasn't been summoned in over a month, and you don't just go to the king unsummoned. If he's having a bad day and doesn't extend his golden scepter to you, you could be killed, right? They got people in the woodworks just waiting to clean up the blood like it never even happened. That's what, she was afraid of. But he loves her and she loves him. And of course she knows that Mordecai is right, but she sends him back a letter saying, I don't think it's a good idea that I just waltz up on the king. I could be killed. And Mordecai sends her back a letter saying, listen, Esther, if you don't do this for us, God will send deliverance for us from some other place. But you don't think that you and your family will escape inside the palace any more than we will out here, right? That'll be the end of your line. And so she's like, okay, hold on. I'll go to the king, but I'm not going to just waltz up to him. You talk to the Jews, ask them to fast for me for 3 days. No food, no water. I'm going to do the same. I'll ask my maids to do the same. We'll say a little prayer and we'll go to the king. And so that's what she does. She puts on her best dress. She goes to the back of the court and she presents herself at eye level. And then, of course, he extends his golden scepter to his beautiful wife. And she comes over to him and he asks her, Esther, what is it that you want, my darling? Anything up to half my kingdom, I'm going to give it to you. And she's like, darling, your whole kingdom's already mine. I just want you to come to this banquet that I have prepared for you. And you can bring Haman. And so he's like, oh, I know you want something. She's like, maybe I do. And then she turns around and she leaves. And then Haman turns around and he leaves. And he goes past the gate and Mordecai's sitting in the gate and he's outside the gate. And he still does not bow down to him. And this time Haman notices. And Haman is so upset and butthurt that he's not getting bowed down to by this guy who he's trying to kill. And everybody that he knows and loves, he's trying to kill. So he goes home and he complains to his wife and his friends. And then his wife, being a real man she is, she says, hey, all the Jews will be dead in just a few days. Why don't you build a gallows 50 feet high so that everybody can see Mordecai swing on it, and then you can get the 10,000 talents of silver too, right? great idea. Isn't that a great idea? So he has these people working day and night building these gallows. And then that night he goes to this banquet that the queen has prepared for him. And the queen doesn't just say outright on that night what is going on, right? She knows her husband and she wants to butter him up with 2 days of good food and drink. So everything seems to be going beautifully. And the king is like, well, what is it that you want? Anything you want, I'm going to give it to you, up to half my kingdom. She's like, I just want you to come to the banquet that I have prepared for you tomorrow night. And he's like, oh, I know you want something. She's like, maybe I do. Just come tomorrow and bring Haman, right? And so that night, they're together. The king really wants to know what's going on, and he's tossing and he's turning, and he just can't sleep. And so he calls for the servants to bring the chronicles so that they can read off the chronicles of the kingdom to him, and it can bore him to sleep. And it's working. It's really, really boring. But then they get to the part where Mordecai saved the king from an assassination attempt, and he perks up and he's like, hey, did this guy do this? What's been done to honor this man? And the servant's like, nothing. And Esther's like, nothing? And so the king's like, who's in the court? And the servant looks down and he says, Haman's in the court. Queen's like, oh, great. But it is great. Why? Because Haman takes 2 steps into the room, and then the king goes, Haman, what should the king do for the man that the king wishes to honor? And Haman thinks he's talking about him. So he goes off on a spiel that he has probably rehearsed 1,000,000 times already. And he says, you should take a royal robe, a purple royal robe that the king has worn, and put it on him. And then you should take a horse, a royal horse that the king has rode, and you should put him on it. And then you should have one of your princes lead him through the streets and say, this is the man in whom the king wishes to honor, right? Because that's exactly the way everybody wants to be honored, right? So the king looks at Haman and he says, great, do that for Mordecai. And so Haman is mortified, and that's probably where the word came from, because of the way Mordecai made Haman feel at this moment in time. And then the next day, he's got to lead Haman has to lead Mordecai through the streets proclaiming, this is the man in whom the king wishes to honor, right? Well, he's already got these gallows ready for this man to hang. And so this time, his wife, he goes home to his wife. She's not so supportive. She says, oh, you're going to die. And she was very right about that. So what happens is the next day, they have the banquet. And the king is like, what is it that you want, Esther? I love you so much. Anything you want, I'm going to give it to you, up to half my kingdom. And Esther's like, my darling, I love you too. I do want something. If you love me and I found favor in your eyes, please save me and my people, because we have been sold to the slaughter. And if we had been sold into slavery, I would have kept my peace and been quiet. But we have been sold, every last one of us, for annihilation. And the king gets very angry and he says, who did this? And she points to Haman and she said, that is Hasatan. That's the adversary right there. And so the king is about to kill Haman, right? And he lunges at him, but this is this man's best friend. And so he stops himself and he runs out into the garden to collect himself. And then Haman throws himself onto Esther's couch, grabs her wrist and starts pleading for his life. Please, Esther, save me, please. And she's like, save you? Oh, I'm not going to save you. And at that moment in time, the king comes in and he sees Haman grabbing onto her wrist, sitting on her couch. And he's like, will you assault the queen even while I am here? And so in that moment of the time, the servants put a bag over Haman's head, right? Like, do they always have the bag with them? I don't know. Maybe they always have the bag with them. So they put the bag over Haman's head. And then the servant, who's super helpful, he points out the window. He says, look, those are the gallows that Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke great of the king, good of the king. And then Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, right? He looks at them. He says, great, hang him on it. And so they hang Haman on it. Now you would think, story's over, Haman's dead, villain is gone, everything's fine. No, that is not the way it happened. So the thing is, Esther had to come clean. I'm Jewish. Mordecai is not just the Jew who always sits in the gate. He's actually my uncle cousin Mordecai, who is really more like my father. And so Ahasuerus, Xerxes, takes Haman's signet ring, right, which is the ring that you sign a decree with, as if it was the king's decree. And and he puts it on Mordecai. So Mordecai goes from being sitting in sackcloth and ashes, right, to being led around in a purple robe and a royal horse and having somebody proclaim over him, this is the man in whom the king wishes to honor, to being to having father-in-law status, to being viceroy in 2.5 days. It's a very Joseph and Pharaoh type story. So turns out when they asked for Xerxes to reverse the decree, that a royal decree cannot be reversed because a king must be faithful to his word. That's why God is not going to go back on any of the promises he's made to you, no matter what you do, because he's a good and faithful king. And a good and faithful king has to be true to his word. So Ahasuerus, being very smart, he says, you rewrite another decree to counter the decree that I have made. So that's what they do. Esther and Mordecai get together and they write a decree saying that on this day, on the 14th of Adar, all the Jews will be able to band together to defend themselves. And Xerxes says, well, you should really take the spoil, because if they're going to come and kill you, you should take everything in their house. And so they put that into the decree. But the Jews don't want spoil. They just want to live. And so they really take no spoil from anybody, but they have the total victory. And why do they have the total victory? And this is what is important to today and what is happening today right now in Iran. Why do they have the total victory? Because at this moment in time, between everything that happened with Mordecai and finding out that their queen is Jewish, the Jews found a lot of favor in the eyes of the Persian people. So it wasn't just the Jews who banded together to save their life. It was also the governors, the satraps, people who had soldiers fighting under them, right? They had those soldiers fighting alongside the Jews. So they took the total victory, right? Like there was no losses on the side of the Jewish people. And there was a total devastation for everyone who came to kill the Jews. That's when the Persian people sealed their fate for today, because God is going to remember what they did back then for his people, for the apple of his eye. He's not going to forget that. That's how I knew that by Purim, the Iranian people would be free. Because remember, I said that. I said that a bunch of times. And look, yesterday, I did the Purim spiel, right, as Esther for my church. When I got home from church, the Ayatollah Khomeini was dead. And right now, even though people were told to stay inside because everything is going to get bombed, they're running in the streets. They are going to take back their government. Reza Pahlavi is going to be king. They will most likely reinstate the monarchy and have a prime minister, sort of the way that England does there. Vote for a prime minister, somebody to deal with all the actual stuff. And it's beautiful. I think it's really beautiful. I wish it could have come sooner, right? Before 85,000 plus Persians were murdered in the streets, right? I wish it could have come sooner. But I knew it would come by Purim. I knew it would happen by Purim. And aside from that, there's a blood moon on Purim. Now, the blood moons are signs to Jews. And what's about to happen, it generally means war is coming. This that we are seeing right now in Iran is not going to stay as this isolated incident, right? If you could call it that. It's going to spur the Gog and Magog war. You're about to see that. And if you're here in America, like I'm here in Miami, I live in Miami, you need to know that Russia has Iran's back. And Russia also sends weapons to Cuba secretly, like large-scale weapons that they can use against us here. So I would prepare, right? I would prepare now. Prepare your house. Prepare food, prepare water, munitions, whatever it is that you know to do to prepare for your family, do it. Do it now. And blessed is he who sends the rain, right? Because it rains on the just and the unjust. I want to pray now I'm going to go through the comments, right? If you have somebody you want prayed for or something. Oh, and also, right, remember we were praying for Philip Manos to come home. He was taken captive. He was kidnapped in Haiti, and he has his family here in Miami. He returned home. I just found out, actually, he returned home on February 14th. So that's a whole heap of answered prayers. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Jesus. Right now, it's a great time to be alive. Honestly, it's so exciting to live in these biblical times. And I don't know if you saw, like a week ago, there were huge swarms of locusts hitting Morocco. Like, it's incredible. It's incredible to see what we're seeing right now. We are going to see Jesus come back now. The rapture is about to happen. You are gonna see, if you're not taken in the rapture, I swear to you, you will see Jesus coming on the clouds, and it will be soon. Not in your children's day, not in the next generation. You're not going to die before it happens. This is the generation where people will not taste death. And I'm excited about it. I am very excited about it. So I'm going to look really quick through our things. Tony, what are you doing, kiddo? Hold on. I'm good. Jen just saying, you say I'm Christian and a Jesus lover, but Israel is wrong here. No, I don't think Israel is wrong here at all. I want you to imagine, right? And just let's talk about it, right? Because of course you're right to have your opinion, 100%, right? Everybody has their opinion, but I'm going to tell you why I don't believe Israel is wrong here. Iran are the greatest funders of terrorism all throughout the world. They are the one who fund Hamas, who made the massacre on October 7th, where over 1,000 people, over almost 1,300 people were murdered in one day because of a terrorist organization, Hamas, that Iran funds. Hezbollah, also funded by Iran. Israel constantly lives under the threat of a nuclear-empowered Iran, knowing that one day, if they get a nuclear weapon, they would destroy their own country simply to knock us out, or knock Israel out of the water, right? They would do that. In fact, the Ayatollah Khamenei said it. He's like, I will absolutely let this country sink in order to destroy Israel, 100%. That's what they live under. That's their neighbors, okay? Iran's not that far. Six minutes for a ballistic missile, intercontinental ballistic missile, to hit them. 6 minutes, and get this, 66 seconds. If that's not a sign from God that that's the devil, I don't know what else is. Aside from the fact that they've been shouting for years, death to Israel and death to America, right? For years, for decades, really since the installation of the Islamic regime there in 1979. So this will not only cripple terrorist organizations that are indiscriminately killing people all across the world, right? Specifically Christians and Jews, right? But also Muslims, you know what I mean? Absolutely. Like, they're also, the militant groups are also the ones that oppress the Muslim people the most as well. This is going to equal huge scores of human lives being saved on a grand scale, on the scale of maybe millions over the next decade or so, right? That would have been killed by these militant groups being funded by Iran. So there's that, right? There's the fact that they no longer will have to live under, once the regime is flipped, you know what I mean? They will no longer have to live under the threat of a nuclear-empowered Iran, right? Like, if Iran went back to being the way it was, friendly with Israel, right? They could have nuclear power, you know what I mean, for their people, and Israel wouldn't care. America wouldn't care, because they wouldn't be a threat of using that power against the rest of the world. Aside from the fact, this is like, first and foremost, this is a biblical issue. Why? Because of the timing, because of what's happening right now, because it's happening on Purim, because of the blood moon that is coming, because of the war that is about to happen, because this is happening right now. The Islamic world never really imagined that they would lose ground, right? Their whole thing is to take more and more ground for Islam, right? But losing a country as large as Iran is like losing everything. So everyone, specifically Erdogan, right, in Turkey, they're going to scramble to try to get rid of Israel as quickly as possible, right? Everyone is sort of vying for who's going to be the most Islamic power, right? Before it, Iran, is it Saudi Arabia, is it Iran, is it Turkey, right? Like all of those particular players specifically are always vying for where's the Mahdi going to come out of? Is it going to come out of me, right? The Turkey saying that, Iran is saying that, Saudi Arabia is saying that, right? My money, right? Just like my money was on Purim for the freedom of the Iranian people, right, which is happening on Tuesday. My money is on Saudi Arabia, is where the Mahdi come from. The Mahdi will come from. Turkey truly believes, Erdogan truly believes it's him. You know what I mean? And so what you're about to see is that rising up of Turkey and all these different Islamic countries that will wind up in the Valley of Megiddo for Armageddon. And they will be dealt with quickly because it won't be Israel that delivers themselves, as it is never Israel that delivers itself. It's always the hand of God. And so for this alone, there are certain things in Scripture that have to happen because they're already been written down. And we are watching that scroll unfold before us. The same way we're watching biblical plagues play out on lands, right? That people are against God, right? Because if you are, if you're in a Muslim world, in a Muslim country, and you hate Israel, you hate what God loves. So you're against God. That's the Islam is like is a religion against the Ten Commandments. You know what I mean? It says don't kill, don't murder, right? What does the Quran tell you to do? It tells you to murder. It says don't lie. What does the Quran tell you to do? It says lie. You know what I mean? You know, honor your mother and your father. Don't commit adultery. All these things. It's like all of these things are flipped on their head in Islam. So that you have to take that into consideration, that the moment for the fulfillment of the scrolls from Genesis to Revelation is now. So that's why I believe that, I mean, personally, I am very proud of Israel. I am very proud of America right now. Like, I could not be prouder. Like, if I didn't have it together, I'd just be crying about it because it's just, to me, so amazing and so beautiful. And I do realize that this may not stay in the Middle East and it still might come here, right? My mother-in-law, she's like, war is bad, period. This could come here, is bad. Bully, bring it on. That's what I say. There are things that are going to happen that can't be stopped. If it means freedom for the Iranian people, if it means freedom for Israel, if it means honor for this country to destroy the evil that is terrorizing this world, we'll stand and fight. We'll fight it. Whatever he needs from us, we'll do. That's my opinion, my personal opinion. I'm going to keep looking really quick at hola, konnichiwa, hi, ni hao, bonjour, shalom. All right, I love you, Tony. You're so cute. Hold on. Greetings from Venezuela. Hi, Venezuela. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué pasa, USA? ¿Qué pasa, Venezuela? Yeah, and I see freedom coming for Venezuela too, right? I think maybe it will come for the Cuban people next. Like that's a snowball that's rolling downhill really fast that I didn't quite expect to happen right now. And hi, Pakistan, I see you. I'm gonna say hey. Awesome. But yeah, so I pray every day that there will be genuine freedom and prosperity for the Venezuelan people, for the Cuban people, especially for the people of Iran, and especially for the people in Israel, right? Obviously, they have prosperity, but always being under a constant threat. They do not have the freedom that they tend to tout, because they still know their kids go to sleep with helmets on their heads. That is real. You know what I mean? That is real. Is real. Sorry, like, Miriam, awesome. I see a bunch of messages were redacted. Thank you, baby, for doing that. I know you're awesome. Bro is not a caster. Okay, I don't get that. I'm sorry, honey. Cappy. Oh, I'm whatever. Capybara. I don't know. Okay. All right. So, doesn't make every Islamic person a villain. No, not at all. Look, I have a lot of Muslim friends. All right. Part of the reason why I know so much about it is because I have a lot of Muslim friends, right? And let me give you an example, right? And this is why I started studying Islam, to understand what the heck was going on, because most people don't know, right? Years ago, I was doing this performance piece where I do open mics, right? Like tonight on Instagram, we have an open mic. But I used to do them throughout Miami in like brick and mortar places. I started Theater Day Underground. It's literally lasted for over 20 years. And I started this other spot called Margaret Speakeasy. Well, Theater Day Underground, years and years ago, I think this was maybe around 2007, could be 2006, 2007. Oh, the rain is coming. Blessed is he who gives us the rain in its proper time. So, my Muslim friend and I, Fuad, were doing a performance piece where basically he was singing the Arabic call to prayer, and I was singing the Shema, and we were doing it over each other at the same time, right? And we performed this piece. But before we performed this piece, we rehearsed it. We rehearsed it at my apartment, and we're in the middle of this, and it sounds gorgeous. And I am just like full joying this moment. You know what I mean? Just like full joy, like this sounds great. And then Fuad stops and he looks at me and he goes, Kristen, they don't teach Jews to hate Muslims? And I laughed like a little idiot. I laughed at him and I looked at him and I said, of course not. Fuad, do they teach Muslims to hate Jews? And he looked at me and his poor heart was all over the ground. And he said, yes. And in that moment in time, it felt like a needle coming from the inside of my stomach outward, right? Like that's how sharp the pain was that I felt at the idea that that means there's 2 billion people in this world that just hate me because I'm Jewish. And from that day forward, I started trying to understand what the heck is going on. And so I had to learn what is said in the Quran. I had to learn the history of, the world in the Middle East and what all this stuff that was going on. And I listened, not just books, but also lectures. I mean, hours, days of sometimes if a lecture was 4 hours long, I would spend 2 months listening to it over and over and over and over and over again so that I could just know, you know what I mean, and be able to tell. And so I could talk about it, right? Islam for hours. But no, that doesn't mean that every Muslim person is evil. No. But Islam itself is a very evil political ideology. And it's not as much a religion as it is a political ideology. Its goal is to take over kingdoms, to encompass the whole world in Sharia law. And like if you took away if the Muslim leaders in the world took away the death penalty for leaving Islam, Islam would crumble overnight. It wouldn't exist. It would not exist at all in the world. But no, it doesn't mean that the people are evil. because people are just people, right? But leaders in this world can be very evil, and they're also following a satanic agenda. So by any means necessary, that agenda, that satanic agenda, is going to move forward. Now, I'm very thankful for President Trump. I'm thankful for good leaders that we have, but I am not disillusioned. You know what I mean? I know that here in America, we got two parties, two wings, one bird, right? You got the Democrats, you got the Republicans. They're two wings of one bird. They're the grand majority of our politicians, the grand majority of our Vatican clergy, the grand majority of our Hollywood elites, they're all following this satanic agenda. And they're pushing forward ideas, they're brainwashing people, and it is either to be perverse and perverted or to be perverse and perverted. From this angle or from this angle or from this angle. It doesn't matter what they're all serving the same devil. But this is not the majority of people. The majority of people in Islam just want to be good people. They just want to not sin and they want to go to heaven. That is the majority of the Muslim people. And don't get me wrong that I don't know that. I know that. I know that. And I'm going to tell you something. Islam has not hurt anybody as much as it has the Muslim people. It has not killed as many people as it has killed Muslims. It is not oppressed and hurt. You know how many Muslim women have had their beautiful faces disfigured in acid attack after acid attack? We're just now seeing those things here in the West. But they've been dealing with it in Islam forever. So don't think that I don't love the Muslim people or I wouldn't try to evangelize to them first and foremost. I'm supposed to evangelize first and foremost to the Jewish people. That's what I'm supposed to do. But honest to goodness, I know that I don't. I evangelize to the Muslim people more than I evangelize to anybody else because I love them, not because I hate them. I don't hate them. I love them. And I think about my friends, because it's not a few friends, it's a lot of friends. Because when you're young and you're Jewish, right, you have a lot of things in common with Muslim people, right? You think, oh, you cover yourself, I cover myself. You know, I'm religious, you're religious. You know, you know, there's a lot of similarities. So we had a heap load of Muslim friends, you know, and I learned the hard way a lot of things. I learned the hard way a lot of things. But that doesn't mean that I don't pray for my Muslim friends every day, and I don't want and that I don't want to see them saved. I want to see them saved. I have dreams all the time, just full of my Muslim friends. And I just want them all saved. That's all I want for them. There is no good thing that I don't want for the Muslim community, specifically my friends. So, like, that's how I feel on that. You know what I mean? Anyway, who is Iran if it's not the people, right? I'm looking at I'm sorry, my Hindi is so terrible. I can't tell you your name, right? Like I can't read it. It's Sanskrit. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I apologize. I did learn Sanskrit for a minute, you know what I mean? But in the 7th grade, like for a year, you know, I can't do that. But one of the people in the chat, they're like, Iran is wrong here, you know, question mark. Who's Iran? It's the Iranian people. Do you know how happy they are right now? How happy they are that they are going to be freed, that the Ayatollah Khomeini, I have been seeing videos of reactions of people finding out that this monster is dead, and they can't stop shaking with tears and joy, tears of joy, you know what I mean, and elation, because they're just so relieved, right, that this man that has killed everybody that they have loved, right, like right now, okay, 85,000 people by the Iranian number. So we're talking probably more like 100,000 civilians were murdered in the span of a month. In the span of a month, those people have been murdered in Iran. So it's the same in Israel. Like, Iran is a huge country, right? You got like 80, 90 million people in Iran. It's huge, right? 127 provinces of Persia, right? Like, it's huge land. Israel is the size of New Jersey. You know what I mean? It's super tiny. You know what I mean? On October 7th, right, when they lost 1,300 people, everybody in Israel lost somebody. Right now, everybody in Iran has lost somebody. They're all mourning for someone because of this evil regime. And that healing starts today. And they're going to look on the people that they have lost in the years and the decades to come as war heroes, right? They're going to look and they're going to see their freedom and they're going to see what it cost, right? Like on my wall, I have a purple heart from my uncle. And I look at that and I'm like, look what he gave so that my country could be free and so that the world could be free from a regime like the evil Hitler regime that it was. You know what I mean? It would have done, Germany in the 40s would have done what Islam seeks to do now. They would have taken over the whole world. Why? Because they're serving a demonic agenda. So by any means necessary, whatever they need to do, whatever the devil needs to get what he wants done, he will do it. Right? And so this is why you see Mein Kampf in every home in Gaza. Right? Like that's what they found when they went into Gaza. They found Mein Kampf in that's the book that Hitler wrote, right? They found it in every single home. Like, it's popular reading. And it's not to like learn about the past so you don't repeat it. It's so that they can repeat the past, you know? The Iranian people are going to take back Iran. So no, in my opinion, Iran is not wrong, because Iran is the people. And the Islamic regime is not them. I remember when I first moved to Florida, right, in 87, I had a friend, a young friend, and her mother looked at me when I said they're from Iran, and she said, we're Persian. We're Persian. We're not Iranian, we're Persian. Right? And she was so emphatic. I was like 6 years old. And I didn't understand why she was being so emphatic about that. But I understand today. When I look at the bloodshed, when I see the oppression, when I see what they took away from the Iranian people, how free they used to be. I understand it now. But as a kid, I could not have understood it. Like, I didn't get it. But now I know. There's a lot of things people just don't get until, you don't know until you know. You know what I mean? People look at a beautiful scarf and they think that's a beautiful religion. And that's not the case. That's not the case. All right. Jesus is Lord. Hallelujah. Can I talk in English? I am talking in English, dude. I mean, I hope I'm talking in English. Sometimes I talk in Spanglish and ain't nobody can understand me. Remember, Jesus didn't say, he says, don't think that I came to bring peace in the world. I came to bring a sword. And that's what he's coming back as. Everybody thinks Jesus is like, there's this whitewashed version of Jesus, as if he is, I don't know, Mahatma Gandhi, you know what I mean? No, that's not who he is. When Joshua met Jesus before his incarnation, he was carrying a sword. He said, who are you? He said, I'm the captain of the hosts of the Lord's army. You know what I mean? The captain of the host of the Lord, right? The Lord's, yeah, something like that. Something like that. Sabaoth, you know what I mean? The captain of the host of the Lord's, you know, army. Hosts being the armies of God. He's a warrior. Jesus is a warrior. He came to teach us how to be meek and teach us how to be humble, because that's what God requires of us, to be a humble servant. There's a lot of humility in heaven. But Jesus specifically is a warrior. God is a warrior. And he's coming back not with foo-foo and flowers. He's coming back with a sword that comes directly out of his mouth to bring judgment upon the wicked in this world. So don't think, oh, war is not his way. Look, war itself, for what it is evil. But there is a righteous war, right? You can fight a war in honor, right? Like God guided David's aim. And that's what we need to pray for when we are fighting righteously and out of honor, that God guides our aim, just like he did guide David's when he was just a shepherd's boy. That's what we need to pray for. So I want to start praying. What color is my Bugatti? I don't have a Bugatti. I have a Lincoln. And it's green. All right. You think that these Trump and Israeli presidents, people are good? Yeah, I do. I do also think that both Netanyahu and President Trump have advisors that are wicked, that are trying to move his agenda or their agenda toward what the devil wants, right? And this is why we spend so much time here praying for the devil, for the president, our presidents, right, not to take any wicked counsel, right? That those people should bring a stench up in their nose, that they should take no